Okay, so in this video, we're going to walk through how to decide on your ultralight shelter. This was inspired by extra ultralight's video here. I highly recommend you watch this after this. The reason why I felt the need to make this is because there's some more beginner level frameworks and methodologies that you should take into account when deciding what shelter to use. Ezra, extra ultralight, he tends to optimize just for weight, which is fine, but that's not for everyone, as we will see here. A lot of your environment, the types of activities and the seasons that you do these activities will decide on what your shelter should be. And so we're going to walk through all of that. And then if you are more advanced or intermediate, I'm going to give you some more suggestions and some different shelter options that you may have never heard of, and give you some methodologies for when deciding what to choose. And this will be equally as helpful for beginners as much as it is for people that backpack every weekend or do multiple and have done multiple through hikes. So first off, the type of activity that you will be doing, obviously your shelter will depend on the type of activity that you will be doing. So there's ski touring, mountaineering, fast packing, through hiking, and backpacking generally. There's also bike packing, but I mean, that can be used very similarly to all of these, and I don't really have much experience with that, so I won't include that here. And then what environments are you going to be doing these activities? If you're ski touring and mountaineering, you're likely going to be in the alpine or subalpine. If you're fast packing, you're likely going to be in the subalpine and montane areas. I included this here. Alpine is where it's like above tree line, lots of wind, more chances for snow. Subalpine, again, lots of wind, maybe a little more likely to get some rain, as well as there's still some chances of snow, but at least you have some protection with some trees. And then montane is forest, more or less. And then obviously as you go lower and lower to sea level, then you're having wetter, rainier conditions. Desert, I have no experience with, so I won't talk too much about. Beaches and oceans typically are very humid, and so you're dealing with condensation and there's higher chance of rain. And then summer, you can have some rain, wind, and lots of bugs, but typically you won't have colder temperatures or snow. Again, depending on where you are, you might have condensation or high humidity and obviously heat. And then 3 season can have a mixture of all of these. And then 4 season, obviously snow, wind, colder temps, no bugs, and then maybe some condensation stuff, but not typically. So when you're deciding your shelter, you want to keep in mind what kind of activity you will be doing and where you'll be doing this and in what time of the year. So what you choose for, let's say, summer fast packing in, let's say, the Canadian Rockies is going to be completely different from what you choose to do ski touring and mountaineering in the Alps. We're going to get into the actual types of a shelter. So there's freestanding, trekking pole, bivvy, tarp, and then hammock. I don't have any info on hammocks because I've never used a hammock. But for freestanding, the benefits are typically it's more storm-worthy, it's very easy to set up, and usually it's more comfortable and there's more living space. And this is just because of the angles of the walls are typically more straight up. With trekking poles, they tend to be quite angled, with the exception of the X-Mid, which we'll get into. The cons of the freestanding is typically they're the heaviest style of shelter and they take up the biggest pack size. If you have like a 30-liter, 40-liter bag and the rest of your gear isn't super ultralight or optimized, then you might have a hard time fitting everything into your bag. For freestanding, there's 2 types of freestanding. There's semi-freestanding and true freestanding. Semi-freestanding, a great example is the Nemo Hornet. I personally have this. I will be selling it, and that is because semi-freestanding, you should almost avoid at all costs. So what that means is that in order to get the full space of the tent and the vestibules, you need to stake it out. So see here in the corners, you need to stake out the corners in order to get that full space, as well as to get the full vestibule space, you have to stake it out here. I guess it's more so personal preference, but then you also have to bring extra stakes, and it's not really a freestanding tent. It's semi-freestanding. So it's kind of a bit of the worst of both worlds, Whereas true freestanding, a good example of this is the Durston X Dome, and there's other examples too, but this is just like one of the more new designs that do it well. And so see here, it doesn't require any staking. You can set it up without any stakes. And so this is good for if you're in sand or you're in the Alpine and there's a lot of rocks. Although you would, if you are in the Alpine, because you'd be higher up, you'd be expecting more wind. And so you would want to stake it down and attach guidelines. But just for example's sake, if you didn't have the ability to stake it down, you'd be fine. Whereas with that Hornet, then you're kind of screwed if you can't stake the corners and the vestibules out. And so the pros of a semi-freestanding is that typically it's a smaller footprint, so it's easier for site selection, but the cons is that you need to stake it out to get the full space. The pros of a true freestanding tent is that the vestibule space is always present, doesn't require stakes, but the cons are that it's a bigger footprint usually. And for all freestanding tents, what you should look for is for a tent that pitches fly first, as well as it can be pitched with the inner first, or both at the same time. So again, another example is the Durston X Dome, and there's many others that do this. But the reason why this is important is that if it's raining while you get to camp, you don't want to set up the inner and have this all get rained on and start to get a pool in your bathtub. So you want to be able to pitch the outer first, or to have it all connected and pitch it all at the same time. So for freestanding, you want to look for something that is truly a freestanding tent and that can be pitched fly first. And generally these will weigh between, depending again, if you are one person or two person, I forgot to bring that up, but that is also a big criteria. So if it's two person, then you're looking at around 2 pounds, somewhere between 1.5 pounds to 2, maybe even up to 3 pounds, depending on how much money you're willing to spend. And then if you're one person, you're still looking at just over a pound or 1.5 pounds typically. The reason you want to look for a freestanding tent that pitches fly first is so that if it is in shoulder season and there is no bugs and you want to save weight, you can actually just bring it without the inner and just have this shaped style tarp that you can just sleep under without the internet, and so that you will save however much, like 400 grams, like 3/4 of a pound from not bringing the internet. The next style of shelter is a trekking pole tent, and so the pros of this is that it's lighter compared to a freestanding tent. There's more comfort and living space when we compare it to a bivy or tarp, but not so much compared to freestanding. Typically, again, depends on what product and what model you're looking at, but the cons are that it's a bigger pack size, again, when compared to a bivy or tarp. Not the biggest. The pack size is smaller than a freestanding tent. Now there's 3 types of trekking pole tents typically. There's an offset, so an asymmetrical style tent like the X-Mid. So you can see that the trekking poles are up to an offset, and then there is pyramid style. So an example of this is, let's say, Hyperlight's Ultimate. It's a pyramid style, as well as Z-Packs Ultiplex. This is also a pyramid style. And then A-frame. So this is an A-frame style trekking pole tent. So the trekking poles are used to support and create the structure of the tent. And now 2 of these are much better than one, and the worst one, in my opinion, is the A-frame style. And the reason that is because when you lie down in these, the head and the foot end of this fabric tends to touch your head, depending on how big you are, as well as how big the tent is. But it is very normal to have, especially with DCF tents, to have condensation issues where your head is brushing up against this and then kind of ruining the down of whatever you are sleeping in and wearing. As you can see, there's not as much space in here in terms of like head and feet wise. compared to the X Mid. And that's simply just because the design is better. As you can see, there you're not even close to the fly here. So the pros of an offset is that it's good for winter. Um, Cons is obviously that setup can be sometimes harder and more confusing, especially for beginners compared to a freestanding tent, since all traditional tents are freestanding typically. And then a pyramid is the best for winter, and that is a true pyramid, not an altiplex or a plex solo. These types of tents typically have a really big front, so this front panel will just catch wind, as well as the backside. It's not as good as a true pyramid like the Ultimate from HMG. Just for an example, because I mean, there's lots of brands that make this style of tent, so this is just an example. So this is really good for winter. The next best thing, or a thing that is truly better for winter, is like a Samaya freestanding tent, but those are like 2K, and this is like the second best type of style of tent for winter, especially at lower elevations. Like you wouldn't want to use this at the top of a mountain peak, but it is perfect for subalpine or lower, where you can dig into the snow and kind of choose a good spot, you know. But the problem with the pyramid is that typically it's a bigger footprint, and then A-frames, like I said, they're okay for winter, not the greatest. But the cons is that there's big panels and it's not typically the most wind resistant. And then, like I said, head and feet sometimes touch the wall. And then the next style of shelter is a bivy. So this is one of the lightest options that you can do, as well as it can add some warmth with your sleep system because it is containing all that air. I'll show you some examples. So this is what a bivy can look like, and this is a proper waterproof, breathable bivy, opposed to a bug bivy. A bug bivy is just with mesh, and so that's just for protection from bugs, like this. And even these can add some warmth, but not as much as something that's waterproof, breathable like these. And so the cons are obviously small and claustrophobic, and you can have condensation issues, and you're more likely to have condensation issues because it's such a small space. And if it is raining, there's no such thing as a waterproof, breathable fabric. It's either it's not raining and it's breathable, or it's raining and it's not breathable. You can't have it raining while it's still being breathable. So that's the problem, and that could obviously affect your down. And so I would only bring a waterproof, breathable bivy if I know it is likely not going to rain, but I just want some extra protection, and or I have a pretty light sleep system and I want to add some extra warmth. And it's very popular in Asian backcountry backpacking and backpacking culture to include a bivy with like a tarp or pyramid style flat tarp or shaped tarp. And that they do that just to add warmth, as well as I think I think the Japanese and the Chinese really love their gear and their brands and their identification with it. This is a side tangent, so I won't get into it, but you'll see if you get into ultralight, into the niche ultralight posts on Instagram, you'll see these like events and things and people doing this very regularly. So yeah, there's bug bivy, so it's breathable. It's very rarely will you have condensation issues, but it is possible depending on the style of the bug bivy. Oftentimes, let's say the Splash Bivy by HMG. You can see here they use a 7D or 10D material. It's breathable, but it adds some warmth. It's not waterproof, but sometimes it can have condensation issues depending on the outside temperature and like the warmth of your breath and whatnot. My dad has this, really good, but he noticed the same thing with condensation stuff. And then waterproof, breathable. So this is like, again, probably one of the lightest options you have for a shelter that can keep you dry, with a caveat that if it is raining and you're super enclosed and you're likely going to have condensation, so you will likely still get wet. Not as wet as if you were without a shelter in the rain, but that's something to consider. And with certain types of techniques and pieces of gear, you can heavily prevent that condensation. Um, so yeah, it's waterproof, breathable. Is that it typically is the lightest. It's pretty compact and it adds warmth. It can wet out and condensation. So if you're having like a 10-hour rainstorm, you're definitely not going to want to be in this. Just like any other piece of rain gear, it can wet out and you'll just be soaked. So that's one big caveat. And then the next is tarp, my personal favorite. So I like these because they're the lightest. Typically they're the cheapest. Again, depends on the fabric, as well as because of the way tarps are. It's just like a piece of plastic or piece of fabric that's over your head, and so you have a lot more breathability and ventilation, so condensation is never an issue. But the cons are that it typically requires skill. There's no bug protection just within by itself, as well as the stormworthiness and the coverage can be an issue depending on the size of the tarp and the way that you've pitched it, as well as it can be slightly colder because you don't have that draft prevention that would come with a freestanding trekking pole or a bivy. Just a rectangle or a square. It's not shaped of any kind. There's multiple ways, and the pros of this flat tarp is that there's multiple ways to pitch. Typically, they're lighter, but the cons are that it requires more skill than other types of tarps. Usually, it can take longer to set up if you're inexperienced, and there's sometimes less coverage. Again, depends on the size. The shaped and the mid pyramid style tarps. So the pyramid style would be like the Z-Packs pocket tarp. As you can see, there's no bug netting, nothing. It's just a shaped tarp, and it's like a hybrid between a tarp and a tent or a trekking pole tent. This is kind of a bit of the best of both worlds. And so the benefits of that style of tarp is that it's stormworthiness. There's more coverage, typically from a 360 degree, and it's usually simpler, so you can pitch it easier and faster. But the cons are there's only one way to pitch, and it is usually slightly heavier than a flat tarp. And then there's poncho tarp. So this is one of the lightest and most versatile ways to go ultralight. And this is when your flat tarp also has a hood on it, so you can transform it into a poncho tarp when it's not in shelter mode. I'll get into examples and brands that actually make these styles of tents and shelters. So the cons of this style is that it doesn't add extra warmth if you are wearing it as a poncho typically, because if you're, let's say, on alpine, if you're on a ridge and it's super windy, it's just going to flap around. And so yeah, it's not a good wind layer, and you have no rain protection when shelter is set up. So let's say you just set up your tent, you set up your poncho tarp, and it's raining, but you have to go get water. If that's your only protection from rain, then you can be a bit screwed. But if you know it's going to rain, or it is already raining before you set up your tent and before you take off your poncho, then you'll collect all the water that you need, and then you'll be good. So this is kind of a non-issue, but it's still possible that that can happen. Okay, so in conclusion, freestanding tents for people who want absolute comfort, certainty, and ease of use over pure weight savings. These are people used to normal tents and don't feel the need to change anything. But again, avoid semi-freestanding tents at all costs, and look for tents that pitch fly first. For trekking pole tents, they're for people optimizing for weight and or using trekking poles, and who need / want full coverage from wind, rain, and bugs, but also want comfort at camp and with livable space. So typically the transition, it goes from freestanding to trekking pole. Once you realize that you can go lighter, one of the best ways to go lighter is with the trekking pole tent, but you don't want to sacrifice all the at camp comfort with a tarp or a bivy, and so you want something that's lighter but still very similar as a freestanding, and that is a trekking pole tent. The next for bivvies, waterproof bivvies for when you aren't expecting rain and or you're going for a fast known time. And then bug bivvies to combine with a tarp for bug season, or if you know it's not going to rain and you want a cowboy camp. But you should always have some type of rain protection. I wouldn't just go out for a one night, even if I was 80% sure it wasn't going to rain. I would still bring some type of tarp or poncho tarp or something. For tarps, the conclusion is that tarps are the best for when weight matters. Poncho tarp for the lightest possible load up. Flat tarps for super ultralight trips. And you can bring addition to another shelter when rain is expected. And then shaped pyramid tarps for ultralight trips when coverage and storm worthiness is needed. And then pyramid tarp is best for winter. And then with freestanding and trekking pole tents, you'll then have to decide whether you want double wall or single wall. And so the bonuses of a double wall tent is that it's slightly warmer, less condensation issues, but the cons is that it's heavier. And a single wall is that its pros are that it's lighter, but oftentimes if it is enclosed and you don't have good ventilation and you're just sleeping and breathing throughout the night, you will have condensation issues where it will eventually drip on the inside. So you'll need to bring a buff or a Swedish cloth or something to wipe off your tent in the morning. And typically single walls are made out of DCF, and so it's usually more expensive as well. And again, so if you're someone that's optimizing for weight, you're going to look for a single wall tent. If you're someone that wants comfort and you have typically condensation issues, you're in somewhere that's wet and humid, or I've heard even people in the desert have condensation issues. So if you don't want condensation issues, then you'll pick a double wall tent. Now, for criteria, there's cheap, light, comfort, versatility, and quality. I'm just going to get rid of comfort, but so that's subjective. But for this, a general rule of thumb is that you can pick 3, but not 4. So you can have something that's cheap, light, and versatile, but it might not have full quality. And you can pick something that's quality, light, and versatile, but it won't be cheap. And so if you're optimizing for things that are like affordable and cheap, then sil poly and sil nylon are going to be your best friends. And if you want something that's at the absolute lightest, 0.5 ounce Dyneema is as light as it gets for a shelter fabric. You will not want this as your bathtub floor, but this can work as a rainfly or as a tarp, but you will have to be careful and you are sacrificing some durability. 0.67 ounce is a good in between where you're getting a little more durability. You're still getting insane light weights. But again, it's not going to be as durable as a 0.8 ounce Dyneema or sil poly. 0.67 or 0.7 ounce Dyneema is probably as low as I would go for a bathtub. And then 0.8 ounce is what typically you'll find in most bathtubs, most ground sheets for different shelters. So if you're looking for the lightest possible setup and you're looking for something that's quality, you have kind of 3 different options or domains to choose from. If you're expecting minimal rain, then you can get a small flat tarp or a waterproof bivvy. Some examples is the Gear Swift poncho tarp. And so this is around 360. If you're in USD, then just divide 360 by 1.4. And that comes out to 110 grams. Insane. But because it is so light, because it is small, you won't have as much coverage and you'll be a little more claustrophobic at camp. Ezra Extra Ultralight has a bunch of videos on this shelter. Another option for a poncho tarp is the Mount Laurel Designs. It's anywhere from 200 USD to 350 USD depending on the materials and the fabric you choose, as well as the size, but it can go anywhere between 280 grams to 140 grams. So again, still super light. And then if you want just a minimalist flat tarp, not a poncho tarp, you already have a rain jacket and it's relatively light, then you can get something from Mount Laurel Designs, and this will range 110 to 230 USD. And the weights here are also insanely light. Again, this is like the lightest possible setup that you can have. If you are more the bivvy style, you want to go super light on your sleep system, but you want the added security of some extra warmth, as well as you don't want to hassle with a tarp, then bivvies might be what you choose. And so this will range from 122 grams. I believe this is the lightest option that I've seen for a waterproof breathable bivvy, and that's from MLD again. It's 185 to 285 USD. Again, depending on the materials and the size you get, it can go up to 190. Another good option is the FKT ProVent UL Bivvy, and there's a bunch of other options. I will be making another video of my favorite resources for ultralight backpacking and through hiking, and in that I will give you a spreadsheet of bivvies and a bunch of other things as well. So subscribe if you're not already. And then another option, this is just a ridiculous price for this one. This is the Samaya Nano Bivvy. It's $710 Canadian, I believe. And so it's 245 grams, and this is designed for like mountaineering and sleeping in on a mountain peak. And so for most people, this won't be applicable unless you're a dentist and you go mountaineering. So if you are expecting wind and rain, you might be in an area that's a little more exposed, then a shaped / pyramid tarp might be the best choice for you. Some cool options are the Ounce Designs. I forget what it's called, but it's 150 grams. It's really hard to find info about this. I think Garage Grown Gear was selling this at some point, but they must have sold out. It's this guy from Hong Kong, and he runs limited batches. You can go to his website, Ounce Designs, and if you are looking to learn about their shelters, you have to go all the way to the right and press here. But if you are looking to buy, then he sells the Adobe, which I will get into, at Microdose Gear. So yeah, here it is. So this is the Adobe. This is another great option if you're expecting wind rain, you want a shaped pyramid tarp, as well as you want the option to sleep 2 people. I haven't seen this in person, so I'm not super confident saying that it will sleep 2 people, but the way that it is designed, it has this beak that's very unique. I haven't seen anyone do this, and you can extend it out so that it fits 2 people, depending again on size. I'm not sure. And then there's the chill mode, and then if you know you're gonna get rain or it is raining and there's wind, then you can put it into storm mode with it fully enclosed. This is around $800 and it's 165 grams. So this is as we know, Asia as a continent typically has smaller people than North America. So if it sleeps 1 to 2 people in Asia, that might not be true for North American people. So I want to get my hands on this to see. But if it does sleep 2 people, then this is the lightest 2-person shelter I've ever seen. Another great option is just a pyramid style tarp. So MLD makes one, Bombfist makes one, Hyperlight makes one. Just here I have the Hyperlight version. So the 2-person version is $1,000, insane, 540 grams. The 4-person version is 635 grams. And you choose something in this style if you're going to be doing ski touring and you want a base camp for mountaineering efforts and whatnot. And then this style, these 2, 3, and even 4 styles, you're probably going to choose if you're a thru hiker, fast packer, backpacker. They're lighter than something in this style. But so yeah, Pocket Tarp by Z-Packs, 157 grams. Ultimate One by Hyperlight, 235 grams. Now, if you're expecting wind, rain, and bugs, you want a shaped pyramid tarp with bug netting. Now, you can get a flat tarp with a bug bivvy or a bug head net, which is a great option. As you can see here, these are your options if you choose one of these styles of tarps, or you can just get that built into your shelter. So this is the Metaphysics Adobe, really hard to buy. I'm not sure if he's ever going to re-release this. It's 204 grams. This is easy and available, 277 grams, 700 USD by Gossamer Gear, the Whisper. And then the Z-Packs Hexamid Tent 275 grams. And then Yama Mountain Gear also has a project in the works to add bug netting to the Criferum. I'm paying attention to this because as we know about what we've already learned, is that shaped tarps are better for storm worthiness. And this is just a great storm worthy style tarp. And if it includes that bug netting at the bottom, then it checks a lot of boxes. Okay, so if you are on a budget and you also want to prioritize weight, you'll likely get something very similar, but just in a different fabric. So these are mostly all, these are all DCF, Dyneema. And so you'll choose something that's sil poly or sil nylon. You want to go with sil poly because sil poly doesn't absorb water and it doesn't stretch as much as sil nylon. If sil nylon gets wet, it can actually add to the worn weight because it absorbs a significant amount more water than sil poly. So look for something that's sil poly. Again, you have MLD Monk / Super Monk tarps. You have the MLD Pro Poncho. You have this brand. I haven't seen much people talk about it. It's lightweight equipment poncho Pyroam. They're from Ukraine. I like the design of the poncho. I'm curious. I kind of want to get my hands on this, but 350 grams, 321 Canadian. So pretty fair price. And then Gatewood Cape. This is just iconic in the backpacking community. This has existed for probably a decade or more. It's 310 grams and 207 USD. And then what I just talked about, the Yama Mountain Gear Criferum. It's a super cool shaped tarp. And then also Sling Fin makes an option of that. And there's more options on what I'm just showing, but these are the ones that come to mind that have piqued my interest that I think are great options. Now, if you're someone who doesn't really care too much about getting the lightest, you're not counting grams, and you want a little more comfort at camp, including like a bug space, you want a bathtub floor, you want to be off the ground, etc., you're probably going to get something that's sil poly, sil nylon, and it's a 2-wall tent. So there's the Durston X-Dome 1 Plus or 2. It ranges from 680 to 480 Canadian, 2.7 pounds or like 2.2 pounds, depending on which size you get, as well as the X-Mid. So this is going to be lighter because it doesn't have any poles. You use your trekking poles as a trekking pole tent. Obviously prices, weight. And then another great option is then you have the 3FUL Lanshan 1 Pro. Super light, one person, and like cheap. I wouldn't say super light, but cheap for sure. And then if you want something that's pretty light, good quality, and quite a bit of comfort, then you will have a fully enclosed tent, like a pyramid style tarp tent, like Z-Packs Plex Solo, the Mid 1 by Hyperlight, the Tarp 10 Pro Trail, or the Bombfist Solos 1 person. And you can just look at the weights and see, like, if you're optimizing for weight, you'll probably get something like the Z-Packs Plex Solo. If you're a taller guy, get the Ultraplex. If you're someone that's optimizing for livable space and headroom, then maybe the Bombfist Solo might be your vibe. Yeah, I would just do more research, figure out the type of tent that you want, the style, and then go down rabbit holes on Reddit and YouTube and search up reviews and whatnot. Now, there's also A-frame and offset trekking pole tents that use 2 poles, so X-Mid Pro, Z-Packs, and Hyperlight all make their own versions. And then if you want a freestanding tent, just as an example, there's probably better options than this one from Hyperlight. But as you can see, it starts getting pretty heavy, almost 2 pounds. And then another thing to look for is if you're looking for a 2-person tent, you want to make sure that the bathtub floor is 50 inches wide. Otherwise, one of you will be able to have a 50-inch wide tent pad, and the other person will have to do a 20-inch wide pad, which kind of sucks. So that's another kind of thing you want to make sure of. Now, these are my personal top picks. If you want the lightest, you're going to probably have a poncho tarp and a bug head net, and you're going to have wind gear so that bugs can't or mosquitoes can't go through your wind layers. And if you want the most comfortable and kind of affordable, then you'll probably get the Durston X Dome. These are some other brands to look at. They all make tents, good tents. They have a good reputation in the industry. So I visit all their sites, check it out, see what you like. And then once you've kind of decided what you want, then you'll obviously look to buy it. And so you can buy it secondhand from Reddit, r/UL Gear Trade, r/Gear Trade. Backpacking Light has their own forum for buying gear off of other people, and then Facebook Marketplace, eBay, etc. And if you are buying it brand new, you can buy it most times directly from the brand. You can look at Gear Trade or Garage Grown Gear. And then if you're in Asia, there's a lot of other stores like Microdose and many others, but I won't get into that now because I doubt any people from Asia will be watching. And then next video, I will be ranking all of these shelters, and so subscribe if that interests you. I will be also sharing the Ultralight Iceberg. I'm excited for that. Let me know if this helps. But before I do sign out, I'm actually going to go through this reasoning myself and show you how I think about when I decide what system to bring. So for a bit of context, I have a 5-foot by 8-foot ultralight tarp made of 0.67 ounce DCF that I made myself. I love it. It's big enough for me. Perfect, no complaints. And so that is the type of tarp that I will take on solo ultralight trips where I don't really care about comfort as much as I do about just going light. Maybe I'm doing a couple big days and I just want to go as light as possible. This thing weighs about 140 grams, and then I also have a bug bivy that weighs similar 150 grams ish. So together that's under a pound, and it basically can get me through any conditions that I really need unless I'm in the Alpine. And so what shelter am I looking for? I'm looking for something that is 2-person, that I can take fast packing with someone. I can take ski touring, as well as I can use through hiking or backpacking as 2 people. Now, what conditions am I going to be using it in? Mostly alpine, subalpine, and montane, as well as I'm mostly going to be using it in summer and 3-season, but sometimes 4-season, obviously, when I'm ski touring. So the main things that I want it to handle well with is rain, wind, some snow, and bugs, as well as condensation. Personally, I do not like single wall tents because kind of silly that you get such an expensive tent to protect you from rain, and then you have all this condensation that's dripping on your face. And so I want something that's a double wall or that's super breathable like a tarp. So freestanding is out. Triangle pole, maybe pyramid. Freestanding could work, and there's a couple options that I'm interested in. I'll get into that in a sec here. Bivvy's out and tarp's out since I already have that, and it's perfect for 1 person. But like I said, I'm looking for 2-person. So the criteria is super light. I want it as light as possible. I want it to be versatile so I can use it for ski touring, fast packing, backpacking, through hiking, and mountaineering if I have to or want to. And then I also want it to be quality. So one thing that we're looking for versatility is multi-use. So multi-use means, again, like the different conditions and types of activities that you're doing. And for a shelter to be versatile, you want to look for something that you can switch out the inners with. So a poncho tarp is an example of something that is versatile because I can use it as a poncho or a tarp. Another thing that is versatile is just a poncho or shaped tarp. The reason why this is versatile is that if I'm not expecting bugs, I don't have to bring anything for bugs. If I am expecting bugs, then I will bring something for bugs. but it gets me to choose and basically alter the shelter that I bring based on the trip I'm going on. And because I already have a bivy for my tarp setup, a shaped tarp is probably what I'm going to optimize for, because again, I'm going for something as light as possible. One thing that I'm looking at here is like, this won't fit two people, right? This might fit two people, but because I'm going with another person, I want to think about them. Do they really want to be crawling in and under a tarp? We will probably be hanging out in under the tarp or in the shelter more than I would if it was just me. And so we want some more livable space. Now, a great option would be the Durston X Dome. I won't consider the Xmid because my dad has the Xmid Pro 2 Plus. It's not really fun to get the same thing as someone else, as well as if I already have access to something. If I do want to use it or I want to borrow it, then I can. So there's no purpose in that. But the X Dome is really interesting because it has the benefits of a freestanding tent, which means more living space, more comfort, something that we're both more used to, as well as it has double walls. And so that's good for snow and winter, because that double wall adds extra draft protection and adds some warmth. Typically, a solid inner can add 5 degrees Celsius to your warmth. Can be pitch fly first or inner first or all at once. So I'm really like this. The problem with this is that it is heavy. 2.78 pounds. We currently have the Hornet, and that is a semi freestanding tent. And for the reasons I already listed, I don't like. The biggest thing that I don't like about it is that the footprint or the bathtub is not wide enough to fit two 25-inch pads. And so that's another reason why I like the X Dome too. But it's just heavy. So there's one loss. Now, if I want something that is versatile in all those conditions that I previously listed, as well as light as I can look, it's probably going to have to be this pyramid style. I don't love the price tag of the Hyperlight. Plus, it's still over a pound, and that's just for this fly. That doesn't include bug protection. So I'm going to look at my options. And what I found was the Bonfist Miss 2-person. And the reason why I like this is because unlike the Hyperlight Ultimate, the Ultimate only has one entry. So that one entry is at the front, obviously. There's no zipper on the back. But this has 2 entries. So it's much more livable and usable for 2 people to actually use. Another thing that I like about it is that it's smaller. And so that means it's a little better in the wind than the Hyperlight version of this. Now, the biggest thing that I need to look at is, can 2 wide pads fit in here? And I'm 6'3", I'm not short, so a problem is hitting my head on the internet on the fly and getting condensation all over my clothes or whatever I'm wearing. So 280 centimeters long, it's probably, we can guess probably like 200 centimeters actually livable. I think it'll be fine, and I think it should fit me. So lengthwise, it should fit me. Now, widthwise, can it fit 2 25-inch pads? So we'll look at the inners. Another reason why I like this option is because it has multiple types of inners that you can put with it. So you have the 2-person mesh inner mesh, and then you have the 2-person solid inner, and then you have the 1-person mesh inner and the 1-person solid inner. So it's super versatile. I basically have 4 or 5 different configurations that I can use with this. As I previously mentioned, I already have a bug bivy for my tarp that I personally use already. And so I can just combine that with this shelter and be good and protected from bugs and rain without having to get another thing. But if I wanted to down the line, I could get something like this to fit. Now let's see if this fits 2 wide pads. Okay, so it's 125 inches or 125 centimeters wide. That is 49 inches. That is a bit of a red flag. I know you could think like, oh, that's basically 50 inches. That's as wide as you need. But you also have this pole going through, and the last thing you want to do is put unneeded pressure on the side walls of the bathtub, and then that will make zipping this harder. It'll just eventually deform or cause extra wear and tear where it basically compromises the durability and longevity of it. So that's a red flag. This is not big enough to fit two 25-inch wide pads that are square. Maybe I could make these mummy style shape pads work, and then kind of making it so one goes one way, the other goes the other way. But I don't really want to have to do that. So that is not good. So I'm gonna look at other options. Now, because I do make my own gear, I can just make something like this for this tent, which I probably will end up doing. But if I didn't, then I would look here, and I would look for at different brands who sell similar style internets. So MLD has a bunch of internets, and we can choose the sizes. And then I'd look at like the Duo Mid, XL Duo Mid, and I'd look at the dimensions and see if it works. And it's a bit risky because you only know until you try, but it's a solution nonetheless. But yeah, like I said, I'll probably just end up making this and then getting like the solid one person interior, since the person I am going with probably won't be joining me on these winter activities. But yeah, that is how I kind of reason through the next shelter I'm gonna get. I think I forgot to include the actual weight of this. So 410 grams is 130 grams lighter than the Ultimate 2 because it is smaller. So it's less than a pound. And if I want to go super light, then I just bring a bug head net, and my whole thing is less than a pound in them. It's going to be able to handle snow conditions. It's going to be able to 360-degree coverage. It's going to have double zip access for me and my partner. And yeah, the biggest con obviously is the price. But this is a buy once, cry once situation. And yeah, let me know what your thoughts are on this decision matrix, how to prioritize getting a shelter. Was this helpful? Was there too much information? Did I bounce around too much? Do I need to work on organizing and presenting this? Yeah, let me know. And subscribe if you want to see this video where I rank all the shelters.